All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We want to be respectful of everyone's time. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Follow Connected Live on December 3rd, 2025. This is our last session of 2025. And we are very pleased that this session has been brought to you by our sponsors, Lotus Pharmacy. And we're going to hear from them in a couple of minutes. For those of you who might be new to FALA, just to kind of give you a sense of what we're all about, FALA has been representing the assisted living industry and providing education, training, and regulatory support and advocacy for over 30 years. It was formed by industry professionals to represent and serve the industry. And this is our fabulous team. We're all here to help you. I'm Bijou. We have Tammy, Alberta, Anna, Mary, and Emily in the office. If you need anything, feel free to reach out. We love hearing from you. And I do want to remind everyone to please make sure that you're making the most of your membership. It's not just for administrators and directors in assisted livings. All of your staff have access to our member benefits if you're a member. And some of the great ways that you can get involved with FALA include participating in your local chapter, signing up to serve on a committee, and running for a board seat. Our board is actually going to have seats opening up this year at conference. There'll be elections, so be on the lookout for the call for applications or nominations if you're interested in participating on our board. Another reminder, our 2026 annual conference and trade show is in the works, and we're super excited about it. It's going to be at the beautiful JW Marriott in Orlando at Bonnet Creek. And our theme is Passport to Possibilities, Senior Living with Purpose. Our conference committee is already working on all of the fabulous things that we're putting together for our attendees, and we're super excited about it. And if you follow us on social media or if you saw the e-blast, our call for presentations is now open. So if you're interested in signing up to or submitting a proposal for a keynote or one of the breakout sessions, please get that turned in early so our conference education committee can review it and select our speakers. Our Let's Grow FALA competition is still underway. Just to give you all an update regarding the current rankings, our Orange Seminole Osceola chapter is still in the lead. Our second place, kind of coming out of nowhere, is Pasco Hernando, and our third place is Northwest, the Panhandle chapter. And our current individual competition leader is Susan Carlson with the Waverly. So congratulations to you, Susan. Keep it up. And thank you all who have been doing your best to promote membership. Legislative session is getting ready to get started. And so key dates right now, interim committee weeks are still taking place. There will be interim committee meetings going on December 1st through the 5th, and then also December 8th through the 12th. Regular session starts January 13th and is scheduled to run through March 13th, 2026. I remind you as members to please stay engaged. We really dodged a bullet last year and played some defense with that blood clot legislation. It's really important for you all to respond to calls to action, engage with your local legislators, invite them to your facility, meet with them in their district offices, and of course, contributing to Fall Pack also helps out. So our next legislative committee meeting is coming up tomorrow at 10 a.m. and it's via Zoom. So if you are not a committee member and interested in being a part of FALA's legislative committee, you can find that information on our website, and we'd love to have you join us. One other reminder is that our FALA Foundation is getting ready to deliver gifts to underprivileged residents across the state for the holidays. And so after this call, in the follow-up email, we'll include a link if you are interested in volunteering time, donating funds, donating items, or if you'd like to nominate a facility. And now I'd like to thank our sponsors. So I'm going to turn it over to Dane and Amy with Lotus Pharmacy. Thank you, guys.
Hello, everybody. I am Dane Duval, and this is Amy Hesselgrave.
Hesselgrave, yes.
Some of you recognize me from my 2 years with FALA. Now I have moved on to Senior Vice President of Lotus Pharmacy. We are a long-term care pharmacy in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so we are now branching out and opening here in the state of Florida. Our first location is here in Fort Lauderdale, and I'll let Amy give you a brief history about the company, and then I'll go on from there.
Definitely. Thank you, everyone. It's great to be able to sponsor your meeting today. Lotus Pharmacy, we are in our 6th year. Jill Litwin is our owner and a pharmacist by trade, and she always wanted a pharmacy and women-owned long-term care pharmacy. We've got it. It's great to be a part of that. We are DME accredited for diabetic supplies, which is a huge thing. We have our own drivers, our own cars, and we're super excited to come into the Florida market. I'm going to let Dane touch on the rest of that.
So yeah, it's been exciting. I came on board in September. Jill and Amy were our platinum sponsors at conference last year, and we got to know each other. And so we are doing everything we can. We got our space in Fort Lauderdale on November 15th. We are in the process of hiring a pharmacist in charge. And so we're starting to market. We will be covering Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. That'll be our first one, and then we'll branch out to, once this is up and running, we'll be opening in either Orlando or Tampa area. And what really differentiates us is the fact that we are very front-facing. We concentrate on ALFs, but also will service ILs and SNFs as well. We are a closed-door pharmacy, so we don't do retail. But it's interesting that we concentrate on ALFs, and specifically in memory care, especially with my background as a dementia educator. We'll be providing that to all of our clients, and I will be providing continuing education, and also we'll be doing med tech and a whole bunch of other things. But we wanted to thank you guys for letting us sponsor today. Also, we are sponsoring the Broward County holiday party, and that is on December 11th. And then we're doing the Miami-Dade holiday party on December 16th. So we're hoping to see a bunch of you guys there. And again, we're really happy to be a big part of Follow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. And so if you are in that area, Miami-Dade, Fort Lauderdale, Broward, and you're shopping for a new pharmacy, reach out to Dane, and he can tell you what he could do for you. So thank you again for sponsoring. You guys are amazing partners, and I look forward to seeing you in Miami and hopefully Broward if I can make it down. So. All right, so now we're going to move on to our education and regulatory update with Miss Anna Lopez.
Thank you very much. Just a few reminders. Senate Bill 890 and House Bill 1421 has gone into effect. That has to do with the blood clot language. You can find those requirements under Chapter 429.55 parentheses 2 of the Florida statutes. As of July 1st, 2025, you all have to provide on admission information regarding blood clots. If you have not done so, or if you still need a pamphlet on blood clots, and you're a Follow member, please know you can get it for free on our website. Just go to follow.org and go to the store, and you could download it from there. If you're not a member, it's okay. You can purchase it and then become a member, get things for free. Also, the Aspen regulation set has changed as of September 16th of 2025. It now has regulatory numbers for the blood clot, which means surveyors can now cite you if you do not have proof that you are providing your admissions people with this blood clot pamphlet. My suggestion to you all will be have 2 copies. The copy you give the resident and their family members, and the copy they sign and date that you keep in their record. Also, FOL is monitoring the proposed new rule on Chapter 59A-35.112 regarding the data breach transparencies. The rule was workshopped on September 17th, 2025. So that information is still pending. Rule Chapter 59A-36.006 and 59A-36.021 has been amended and adopted as of November 27th of this year. The amendment proposed allowing admissions at the discretion of the administrator to admit an individual with respiratory illness that can spread through droplet transmission. If an individual is admitted, assurance with all the health, feed, and infection protocols must be followed, and you have to demonstrate that you're following those protocols. Again, it's under Chapter 59A-36.006 for admissions into your standard limited mental health and limited nursing services. And then you can also find it in 59A-36.021, which is admissions into your extended congregate care license. All right. I'm going to remind all the attendees, ACA's Medicaid program office is updating the database. It's expected mid-2026 that it will be up and released and running. So prior to conference. So keep that in mind, that you will probably be getting information coming your way about logging on and updating info. All right, Bijou, that's it for me. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much, Anna. I appreciate that. All right, and now it's time for our speaker. You may have heard her at conference, and she got rave reviews from our attendees at conference, but it's my pleasure to introduce Shannon Miller. She's a board-certified elder law attorney with Miller Elder Law.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I love how dialed in you guys are at the legislature. The elder law section is there and present quite a bit, so it's great to know we have some allies out there for things that when they come up, it's great to kind of join together sometimes to talk about legislation that we can both get behind and sometimes things that we want to block. So great to know you guys are out there as a resource. We're going to talk today about exploitation and in particular scams. Scams are a real problem. It's become a bit of an epidemic, and you guys have really got a primary job in finding out when people are being scammed and also kind of really developing an instinct when things are awry. I'm going to tell you just a couple stories to start, and then I will start to share the PowerPoint. We can talk about the nuts and bolts of what's available to you in Florida. So I had a call from a family member of a lady who was in an independent living situation. It was a gated community here in Gainesville. And what had happened was she was getting a lot of scam calls, and she learned that she had won Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes to the tune of $19 million. So our Publishers Clearinghouse representative somehow made it through the gate of the facility, made it to her room to tell her, knocked on her door, and to inform her that he was a representative of Publishers Clearinghouse and she had won the $19 million. And wouldn't you know, if she paid the taxes, the transfer taxes from California today, that her winnings would go from $19 million to $25 million. And all she had to do was to pay this $12,000 in transfer taxes today to win $25 million. So our beautiful lady was actually getting ready to get into the car with this gentleman. And one of her neighbors, who kind of knew that she was on the phone a lot with scammers and everybody was kind of keeping an eye on her, was able to kind of intervene in this situation, call the police, and our scammer left. But this was one of those situations where we had a very close call We weren't sure where he was going to take her. We weren't sure what was going to happen, but I raised this one case as a kind of an alarm. What we know about scammers and the dark web is that everyone's information is on the dark web. I talk about this all the time. I used to ask a group that I was lecturing to, how many of you think that your information is sold on the dark web? And no one would raise their hand. These days, everybody knows that their information is on the dark web, right? So, if you don't know that, you should know it. But the question is, how valuable is your information? Have you, answered the phone a lot to kind of increase the value of your information on the dark web? Have you actually fallen victim to a scam before? All of these things play into increasing the value of, your information or our victims' information on the dark web. The goal that I have for all of our people is to keep your information in low value so that scammers aren't targeting you. Because what we know about the scam community out there is that it is at least a $60 billion a year business. And that means that in the United States alone, we are seeing scams and exploitation. We see money go out so frequently. And I like to kind of use this analogy to explain how much $60 billion a year is. The amount of money that McDonald's makes in a year and over the entire globe is 1/2 of $60 billion. So McDonald's earns about 32 or 33 billion a year, all the way around the entire globe. We are sending out money for scammers to the tune of double that amount in 1 year in the United States alone. So it's big business. And what we know now is that organized crime has become very engaged and involved in the scammer community. And we are seeing boots on the ground with scammers. So oftentimes what we'll see is this, kind of showing up at someone's house and saying, you have canker on your tree. And they've already targeted this person on the dark web. They have all their information about their address, their credit card numbers, how much money they have. And so they target this person and say, you've already been identified as someone who's vulnerable. So we're going to, really get out there and try and target this person. So it's become a pretty sophisticated network of targeters. And I like to explain the dark web like this. So the scammer who gets you to stay on the phone, and so therefore the value of your information increases in value on the dark web. They may be a low level involved person, right? So their job is to try and keep you on the phone. The more they can keep you on the phone, the more valuable your information is, the more money they will make on selling your information to the next bigger fish. And why do we want to limit our exposure on the phone and limit these conversations? And you guys are seeing this in your facilities. You might have some of your residents who are talking to strangers all the time on the phone. And sometimes it's because they're lonely. Sometimes it's because they think the phone number is someone that they know because it has the right area code, or it's identified on the phone as a doctor's office. This is called spoofing, where the caller can actually use a number they select through an internet third-party site to dial to that person. So it makes it look like they're speaking to someone other than they are actually speaking to. So it's crazy. And I want to tell you guys one more scammer story. And I know we have a question and answer box. I would encourage you guys to put questions that come up for you. Obviously, I'm not going to sidetrack into too much because we have so much to cover today, but I'm going to tell you guys one more story. I had a call with some potential clients recently, and they had been contacted by the Wells Fargo. They had accounts at Wells Fargo, and it was clear to me by the end of the conversation that the scammers had actually gotten into their computer somehow, and they were able to review, although not access, their banking information on their computer. And it was actually a husband and wife who were both victims of this scam. So Wells Fargo Fraud Unit contacted them and said, our fraud unit has been hacked. And your account that has, $300,000 in it approximately, is going to be moved by these scammers. Okay, so these are scammers pretending to be protecting against scammers. Unless you go to your local bank, and by the way, everyone at your local bank is part of the fraud. So you can't tell the local bank people the truth about why you're moving the money. And they actually had them get these cashier's checks. And what's so interesting about this case is that the Wells Fargo managers at this bank actually, were like, you're getting scammed. There's no fraud here. But they were so attached to this delusion that had been created through the phone contact and through repeated, conversations with these people. These people they liked the people that they're talking on the phone to. And so we're going to talk about the brain and why it is that some people are more susceptible and more influenceable than others. But suffice it to say that these scams and schemes are very sophisticated. In that case, they did, in fact, were able to get away with that $300,000. They actually were able to remove those cashier's checks, and they cleared them out of the country before anybody was able to stop those transactions from happening. So, these are just a couple cases where, what we're seeing are people who otherwise are pretty high functioning in independent living, or even living at home alone, able to manage their finances through online banking and that sort of thing, but they're still scammable and influenceable. And so we're going to talk about how does that happen in the brain, that you can be able to drive a car, you can be able to pay your bills, but somehow you're not able to, kind of rationally assess whether you're being scammed or not. So we're going to talk about that. So now I'm going to share the screen and we're going to start to go through this PowerPoint. And again, we're going to talk a lot and I'm going to give you guys a lot of legal information. I would encourage you to write it down. I think this PowerPoint is going to be shared with you guys, so you'll have links to some of the research studies and the statutes and that sort of thing. All right, let's go.
We did have one question in the Q&A. I don't know if you wanted to do it now.
Let's take it. Sure.
Yeah. Somebody asked, what are the latest numbers / statistics around exploitation for Florida, meaning reported and confirmed cases, and where can we find this information?
Yeah, there are not, to my knowledge, we don't have any state-specific information. The places that we look for information is really like AARP does a lot of collection, and the $60 billion a year number is from AARP. A lot of these statistics that we come up with, we're obtaining from AARP. But state-specific to Florida, I don't know. Right now, we do have a legislator, a senator, and I can't think of his name, of course, who is very interested in trying to get telecommunication companies in Florida to be prevented from using the spoofing technique that we just talked about. But it's a ton. And one of the things that we know about, really exploitation and scams is that there is this increased vulnerability as we age. And Florida has the largest growing population of older Americans in the United States. So, we are growing and we are seeing Florida more and more targeted by scammers and exploiters on a regular basis. And we can talk a little bit about some of the crypto scams. I don't know if you guys have come across any of these crypto ATMs. I'll just go off topic for a second to talk about this. One of the tools that we have in Florida relates to crypto scams. So if you have any residents that have been tricked into purchasing cryptocurrency, so blockchain technology currency, typically there's a wallet. And so if it's over $10,000 and you make a report to your local law enforcement officers, a lot of people think, oh, it's gone. There's no way I'm ever going to get it back. No, not with crypto. So crypto, by using this blockchain technology and using wallets where the cryptocurrency is stored, if you have a trail of where the money went, then actually the Attorney General's office has been very successful in engaging in seizures of the wallets of the scammers. Now, this has to happen pretty quickly because those scammers are emptying the wallets pretty fast. But if you have someone, my suggestion would be any crypto scams that we know we have a victim, go ahead and contact your local law enforcement agencies, because they can quickly turn it over to the Attorney General's office, who then engages in the seizure of the wallet. And we've actually seen a lot of assets returned because of these seizures that they've been able to undertake for cryptocurrency. So my suggestion is contact law enforcement on any crypto, any scams or thefts. We always want to contact law enforcement. But just so you know, like, it's hard to recover once it goes, right? These scams in particular. But with crypto, it can actually be seized and recovered. So I'd encourage you guys to do that. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about, how do we deal with, ALF exploitations and scams. And the reason that you guys are on the front line is because it sometimes is earlier in the brain changes that we're seeing with more of a dementia diagnosis. So if we have Alzheimer's disease, what we're learning is that, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the presentation, but you're going to see these first signs predating incapacity. So you're going to start to see some of these early issues where people are more exploitable and scammable. The other thing that unfortunately is happening a lot is this entitlement by family to take their parents' money. I laugh because I can't tell you. We had a situation recently. We did an exploitation injunction, and this family member who had basically taken all of our victims' money, I see him outside the courtroom, and he's surprised that we're pursuing this, returning the finances, because ultimately he's the beneficiary of these assets. And so, this entitlement to kind of take money from family members is a real issue. And let me be clear that it is exploitation, whether you're a stranger or you're a family member. And they say the statistics, and this is an AARP statistic, over 50% of exploitation is committed by family members. More than scammers, more than strangers, more than caregivers. It is, in fact, family members. 52% is the statistic. You guys do have some mandatory reporting requirements. So if you really know that something is amiss, we would just encourage you, call the elder abuse hotline, make that report, just get it off your plate. You don't ever want somebody coming back and saying, why didn't you do something? Like, being a reporter and getting that report on the record becomes important for a number of reasons. But one of the most important reasons is that we can't file an exploitation injunction until a report has been made to the elder abuse hotline. We'll talk about that in a minute. Also, you guys might actually be the first ones to notice what's happening. Be very aware if our person is on the phone all the time. Like, this is something very common, is that these scammers are targeting people who are lonely, or they're trying to find out, what is it that makes this person happy, right? Is it that they are lonely, that they're sad because their spouse died? What is it? We had one case where a gentleman gave away $10 million. Over a period of 3 months. He was a venture capitalist, and he was always looking for the next deal, the next invention. And so these guys crafted an invention for him, and they claimed it was in North Africa. And all he needed to do was be the seed money for this new app. And our little man, unfortunately, before the family found out about it, had given away $10 million. So, this idea of people on the phone talking to strangers really isn't harmless. What they're trying to do is form a relationship that becomes more important than every other relationship in their lives. And also to find out what can they craft as far as a scam goes that's going to feed that person. So we had a lady who was targeted by this Polish gold and diamond dealer, stole $2.5 million from her because her husband had died. And he said, I'm a rich guy. I'm going to come and sweep you off your feet like a princess. And I have all these gold and diamonds. Unfortunately, it's being held by this country. And I need you to post the bond so I can get my money and come and sweep you off your feet. Right? So these are the things that these scammers are crafting behind the scenes. And often it's more than one scammer who's working together with a group to try and craft this strategy for creating a relationship. There's usually one front person who's talking to our victim on a regular basis, but behind the scenes, we have a group that's figuring out, what is it that's making her tick, psychological analysis. So yeah, you may be the first ones to notice that things are happening. You're noticing more secretive behaviors. They want to talk on the phone privately. They've, kind of changed what they're doing. There's lots of notification signs. They might change bank accounts. They might change financial advisors. They might not want to see their children anymore because someone is whispering to them this repeated mantra, your children put you in the assisted living. We're the only ones who can keep you safe. Whatever it is that's feeding that person, they're going to repeat those mantras on a regular basis to that person until it becomes an attached delusion for them. So you guys might be the first ones to actually see those things. So Florida's exploitation statutes, which are criminal statutes, and the penalties are quite severe under Florida's 825.103. And these laws changed in 2012. Thanks to a number of prosecutors who were like, look, we're not able to get convictions in these cases that are clearly exploitation. We need to change the laws. And so some of the laws changed in 2012 that have created really good exploitation crimes. And you may or may not know that some of these things are a crime. So, for example, and this was this case I was talking about, this family member who was former law enforcement. And he was basically coming around to our little man, and he was taking him to the doctor. And because he's a family member, he's considered a helper under the criminal statute. So if you're related by blood, or you're a care provider, or you're a financial advisor, or an attorney, all these things are considered a helper under the statute. So he told our gentleman that, he was signing a durable power of attorney for healthcare decision making, but what he was really signing was a durable power of attorney that then this gentleman used to retitle his car into the exploiter's name, retitle all his real property into an irrevocable trust where the only beneficiary was this retired police officer. So, this was pretty bad. But that theft by a helper is actually crime. And you can still prosecute a regular theft or fraud, but when you add in this additional kind of influence, which is this theft by a helper, it increases the penalties, and that's where you fall into this exploitation category. Powers of attorney. So I love to just kind of defeat any of the myths that you guys have about powers of attorney. A power of attorney is a document that allows someone to designate someone else as a financial decision maker. That's it. That's what a power of attorney does, right? In the power of attorney itself, it may provide powers for that agent under power of attorney to gift assets, right? Even to gift to themselves. There may be a provision that provides for self-dealing. So, they might point to that. The exploiter might point to that and say, like, under the power of attorney, I can gift to myself, so I'm going to gift to myself. No, that's a crime. So even if the document itself provides for gifting, even to the agent, right, it is still a crime under the statute. So police officers, you guys, everybody seems to think like, no, if the power of attorney document authorizes this person giving assets to themselves, then it must be legal. No, it's not. 825.103 says if you use that authority under the power of attorney, it has to be for the principal's benefit. So the person, the victim, right, has to be for their benefit or their best interest. If you're doing, taking their money to go on a trip to Disney with your family, we had that happen. that is a crime. Okay. So like this idea that just because the power of attorney document authorizes these kinds of transfers does not mean that it's not a crime. So this is probably the most important way that it's the most common way that we're seeing exploitation is by taking a power of attorney and abusing it. Joint account exploitation, joint account theft. So if we have a victim who adds a child, this is very common, adds a child to their joint account, that child doesn't contribute any money to the joint account. They're just added to the joint account because the victim went to the bank and the banker said, well, here's an easy way to have someone else help you with your finances. So the child's been added to the joint account, and then the child takes money out to take their family to Disney. That is exploitation as well. So that is also a crime. And that's one that, you'll hear me talk about a lot, because one of my first exploitation cases involved a lady who had very limited funds, and at her husband's funeral, the pastor approached her and asked her to add his name to her account so he could help her manage her finances, which she did. And then he took all of her money. And it took like 3 years for us to get the money back, and we only got half of it back, and then she died. So, joint account theft is real. It's very stressful. It can sometimes be very challenging for a victim who adds somebody to a bank account. All their money gets taken out, and it's really hard on them emotionally. So negligent mismanagement. If you have a SSI, someone who receives Social Security benefits, and they have a payee named, but that payee doesn't use the money for their benefit, even if all they do is let the money sit in that account, that's still a crime under the exploitation laws. Negligent mismanagement is still a crime. And then we have undue influence, which means if someone's interfering with a long-standing estate plan, they come in, they're a neighbor. We had a lady who was a friend that they'd met at like the bingo at the senior center, who actually went to visit our lady in the memory care unit, took her to an attorney, and had herself named as a beneficiary, unbeknownst to any of the family members or the staff at this facility. So yes, that was exploitation. We did get it prosecuted. And actually in that case, which I think is something that I want to put on your radars, we were actually able to use the trespass warning provisions to prevent that lady from coming back on the grounds to exploit other people. And I just want to talk for a second about 825.102. This was something that I talked about at the conference that we had where I was your speaker, because this was added in 2021. And it's actually an elder abuse statute. But what it says is that you cannot isolate or restrict access of an elderly or disabled adult to family members. Okay. So a lot of you have facilities where, you get this durable power of attorney from a family member. It might be a child, or it might be anybody, right? And they say, I have authority over managing our person here, John. Let's call him John. So Jane comes to the front office and says, I have a power of attorney. I don't want my sister, Judy, to be able to come and visit with John. And I have authority because I'm the agent under power of attorney. No, they don't have authority. So they have financial decision-making authority. But the durable power of attorney statute is only related to Florida Statute 709, which is financial decision-making. There is no provision in Florida except a guardianship. And even in a guardianship, you have to get court approval to restrict family access. So this statute is right on point. And I hate to light a fire for you guys, but technically, if you honor that power of attorney and allow restriction from family access to occur, then you have actually committed the crime under 825.102, which is restricting access without lawful authority. So an agent under power of attorney cannot tell you, don't let Judy come to see John. And I just want to be clear about that. And so a lot of people will say, well, we have Judy's terrible. She comes in and we had this actual situation where I had a facility owner contacting me to ask for help on this issue where, the daughter was coming in and creating havoc in the facility. You guys can also issue a trespass warning to anybody at any time. You're a private entity. Issue the trespass warning if someone is creating difficulty in your facility. So I strongly encourage people to use that trespass warning authority. Make sure the police officer comes out. Make sure that they do it when the person is there. They write it up. Make sure it goes into the system. Sometimes law enforcement officers don't want to do that for some reason. I don't know why, but we consistently make sure that they come out, that they file the report, they issue the trespass warning in person. It's provided to the person with a piece of paper, and that can protect your facility from any ongoing issues. But you can't use the power of attorney document to prevent someone from accessing John. Now, if John is capacitated and he says, I don't want Judy coming in, I don't want her coming in to talk to me, she's terrible, she stole all my money, or for whatever reason, they don't even need to give you a reason. John can do that. John can do that for sure. He can make those decisions for himself, but it can't be the agent under power of attorney because they don't have authority to do that. And I think that's something important and something that people don't really know. So I'd love to be able to educate you guys on that. Now, what is the exploitation injunction statute in Florida? I want to make sure we don't run out of time. Okay. So this is such an amazing tool, you guys. We are very unique in Florida that we have this. It's the first of its kind in the United States. Thank you, Elder Law Section of the Florida Bar. Basically, this statute is a shortcut to filing a lawsuit. So what this basically allows us to do is to look at 825.103, which I just gave you like the shorthand version of what the exploitation, like the crimes are. And we can go into court and say, look, this person has exploited this person. Number one, we want to ask the judge to freeze assets. So even if it's a scammer that's been targeting this person, we have a process now that allows us to go into court and freeze these assets and keep them from going out any further. And sometimes the judge can even look to see, okay, these assets went to scammer over here, this account. So not only can we freeze our victim's account, but we can also freeze the scammer's account, which is awesome. And let me tell you, they're always shocked when we do that. They're like, how did you do that? We have really good laws in Florida, and our judges are not afraid to use it because, again, it's an epidemic here. So we go into court, we do something called an ex parte petition, which means we can go and we can tell the judge, hey, these are the things that are happening. Here's evidence of it that establishes something called clear and convincing evidence. And we need you, judge, to first of all, freeze these assets and maybe freeze the exploiter's assets. Also, judge, we need an order that provides for no contact between the exploiter and our victim. And why does that become so important? Because that exploiter, if we don't have that no contact provision, is going to get back in there and try and influence our victim, right? So this is a really important part. There's no attorneys required to file an exploitation injunction, and there's no filing fee. So we wanted to create a statute that created really no limitations for people. If you've got exploitation going on, we want to make sure that you have court access. And also you can also authorize the power of attorney document itself to be suspended. So then they can't go and continue to exploit while this case is pending. Now, about 2 weeks later, sometimes it's quicker than that. Sometimes we get like 10 days. What will happen as part of the exploitation injunction statute is we have a final hearing, and then there's a final order, maybe returning our assets to our victim. Maybe it's setting aside a power of attorney that was unlawfully obtained or abused. Maybe it's removing someone from a joint account. We have all these remedies that a judge can kind of implement very quickly. So that petition gets filed and we have a hearing in about 10 days or 2 weeks, and we're able to kind of make our victim whole. Now, what do we know about our victims in these cases? They're going to get exploited again. And we're going to talk about that next, because once we know that we have somebody who is in the situation of being exploitable, the challenge is that, okay, we have a hand raised. Just give me 1 second. The challenge is that we have an average number of exploitation events. So a victim will get exploited on average 7 times before either they completely run out of money, which is usually what happens, or they're stopped by virtue of a guardianship or some other method. Okay, did we have a question?
I did, and I couldn't put it in the chat, but
no, go for it.
One of the things that our members struggle with is family members who start diverting funds rather than paying the assisted living facility for the care and services. Basically, they stop paying and they start using those funds for their own personal use.
Yes.
And so I guess the question would be, can a facility initiate that type of injunction? And how do they do that? Because the typical process is to contact APS. APS oftentimes contacts, they go in and they make sure the person is okay. And since they're physically safe from harm, they say, okay, closed case. And sometimes it's referred to local law enforcement who comes in. And I have a member who shared a story with us recently, and it was basically the lady was in memory care, and the officer said, well, do you want to press charges? And the resident said no, and so it was end of story. So this is something that we struggle with, and it's extremely unfortunate. It compromises the care of the individual, and it's rough.
Yeah, and it's so. Let me give you some solutions. Okay, first of all, if the victim consents. So what's required is the victim's consent to file the petition. So for that temporary order, we have to have a consent. I like to get it in writing from the victim. But the victim doesn't have to be the petitioner. The petitioner can be anybody. So it can be an ex-friend. It can be the agent under power of attorney. But we need that consent of the victim in order to file it. Or there needs to be an agent under power of attorney who's going to file it. And the agent under power of attorney can file it even over the objections of the victim, which you guys, we changed the statute to allow for that because so many victims didn't want to prosecute their, child, or they've fallen in love with the scammer for whatever reason. They don't want to prosecute. They don't want this to happen. And also, they usually have a process of brain changes. So the question is, if you have the consent of the victim, that's one way. The alternative is a guardianship. So if you guys notice that, this is happening, the victim won't consent to filing this petition for temporary injunction, exploitation injunction, and you're seeing this agent under power of attorney, yes, you have a duty to report. Go ahead and make the report. You're going to have to do that as a precursor to the exploitation injunction. But then establishing a guardianship to protect that person would be the next step. And you're like, well, we don't want to get in the business of filing these things. And I hear you. I know that can be a challenge. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll just ask a professional guardian and a guardianship lawyer to step in and kind of manage this case on your behalf. Now, is there a cost for part of that? Probably. Could you be reimbursed for the cost from the guardianship assets later? Yes. That would be a legal reason to be reimbursed. But are there cases that we get where the facility pays us to start that case and then we never see them get reimbursed because of whatever reason, the person died or for whatever reason? Yes. I've got to be transparent about that. Sometimes it doesn't work out. What is your option as a facility? Evict the person. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Because they're probably going to go to another facility and do the same exact thing. But yeah, it's very challenging to be in that situation where this is happening. My suggestion is make sure you report it. Make sure that, if you guys are like, look, we got to protect this person, then go ahead and start that guardianship process. But honestly, you're not obligated to do that. You're obligated to report, but you're not obligated to then go to the next step of establishing a guardianship to protect this person. But this is, I'm not telling anybody who doesn't know. If you're on this call and you see this all the time, this is a very common occurrence. And until we start doing the hard things like setting up guardianships for people, it's going to continue, unfortunately. Okay, there was another question. Will you be addressing what we can do if we see a family member of the resident taking all of his or her money? So I think that's what we just talked about. Can you briefly explain what the exploitation injunction is? And I think I've done that also. Okay, So
there was one more in the chat too. Sorry.
Okay, in the chat. Okay, no worries.
Yeah.
These are good questions. Keep them coming because this is I want to create something that you guys can use. Okay. Under 825.102, can someone with a POA and guardianship prevent agency caregivers from visiting the client in a hospital or rehab? So 825.102 is specifically targeted at family members. So, can someone with a POA, no, they can't prevent anyone from doing anything. Remember, the agent under a power of attorney simply has financial decision making. They don't own the person. There's nothing in the laws of Florida that allow for restriction of other people visiting under a durable power of attorney. Now, if they have a guardianship, that means they will have decisions regarding residence. They will have decisions regarding social decision making, typically, if it's a full incapacity guardianship. But as far as preventing agency caregivers, it sounds fact specific. I'm not sure the answer to that. It would really depend on the extent of the guardianship, if the person has some decision-making authority, and, what is the purpose of the agency caregivers visiting the client. It would be a little more fact specific. Okay. All right. Back to our exploitable brain issue. And I'm going to quickly walk through this because it's so important to you guys to understand. All right. So we know that over time, when someone develops dementia, whether it's usually an Alzheimer's type dementia, right? So, we might have this umbrella of dementia, and we might have vascular dementia, we might have Lewy body dementia, we might have a traumatic brain injury type dementia, we might have Alzheimer's type dementia. And depending on what type of dementia we're talking about under that big umbrella, what we're going to see is progression of the disease. So in a typical process of dementia, typically Alzheimer's type, the changes to the brain will occur over 20 years. 20 years. So people often think that when you have that incapacity diagnosis, you're taking the mini mental status exam or the MOCA test, and you're drawing a clock face, or you're counting backwards from 100 by sevens, and you're scoring a 21, a 22, a 23, and the medical professional says you have, you're at the early stages or moderate stages of dementia. That is usually 10 years in. That's usually 10 years in. So we have this clinical research, studied documentation of incapacity, right? So incapacity, and that's like 10 years into brain changes. What we're learning now about the brain research is that in this 10 years before that 20 to 23 classification on the MOCA test, we're seeing these brain changes in these first 10 years. That's where the exploitability and undue influence is happening. So it's a thinning of the cortical insula in the brain, and it really affects these two major executive functions. One is assessing risk, and the second is knowing the difference between the truth and a lie. Assessing risk and understanding the difference between the truth and a lie. That doesn't mean you can't write a check. It doesn't mean you can't drive a car. It doesn't mean that you can't do a number of other things, but assessing risk and understanding the difference between the truth and a lie are things that we're seeing in this first 10 years of brain changes. Also, this weird suppression, and I'm a yoga instructor, so I'm going to be talking about, this third eye. It's like your intuition. Like you're walking down the street, you see something nefarious ahead, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, so you go the other direction. When you're having these brain changes, right? So a thinning of the cortical insula in the brain, what we're starting to see as well is that intuition goes away. Like you're not having that feeling that something's wrong and you shouldn't be here, or this person is lying to you. All of that intuitive knowing is suppressed when we're seeing these brain changes in the first 10 years of brain changes during this dementia process. So the dementia process is actually, the changes in the brain are happening a lot longer than we initially thought. And what we know is that this study that's really cited here, I think this is the right study, it involved a group of about 36 people. They were all exposed to a scam. The ones that fell victim to the scam, was about half of them, and the other half didn't. And they put everybody under MRI, and what they found was that thinning of the cortical insula in the brain. And what that actually is doing is affecting your ability to assess risk and to understand the difference between the truth and a lie. So, what do we do with that information? Well, the brain researchers are trying to formulate, again, clinically researched tools that will help us assess risk in that regard. But right now, we don't have them. We have the MOCA, the mini mental status exam. We have these tools that tell us when you're far enough along that you can no longer make decisions for yourself. But it's really the early part that we don't have a lot of tools to assess if someone is exploitable, except I know it, and I bet you guys know it, because it's that person that comes to my office and is willing to tell me everything about their finances, believes anything I say is true, will take my instructions immediately without kind of vetting them. I know that person is exploitable. And they've probably, and if I say, have you been scammed or exploited? And they, just this one time, and I'm like, yeah, because it's going to happen again, and it's going to happen again, and it's going to happen again. It's going to keep happening until we put a stop to it. So unfortunately, that victim's progression is going to continue. It's not a one-off. And so I always like to tell people, this isn't an anomaly. This is going to keep happening, and I'll be there with them, and I'll tell them, and I'll also tell their family. And we also need to circle the wagons then. So we need to make sure that we use the tools that are available to protect this person. Okay, it's 1:29. Am I going to cut off like in a minute, or do we have a little more time that we can wiggle with, you guys?
It won't automatically end. So, I mean,
we have a little more time. But
okay.
Let's just, in case anybody has to jump, let's just do some of our announcements really quick, and then we can continue. Is that okay?
All right. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So first and foremost, please make sure that you join us for our next session, which will be on January 7th. And our speaker will be FCC. They'll be doing a deep dive into Medicaid long-term care managed care. Also, we have a winner of our $100 Visa gift card from our attendees. So, Emily, do you want to call out our winner?
Sure. Tammy, do you want to?
Yes, it's Cody Wade with the Summit at Citrus Hills.
Cody Wade, congratulations. You won $100. Yay. Super happy about that. Okay, awesome. And then for any of our folks on who are associate members, our January session is available for sponsorship if you're interested in sponsoring and having an opportunity to talk to everyone. And I am going to be quiet right now and let you just continue rolling forward. Feel free to hang with us, everyone.
Okay, so I'll try and wrap it up in the next few minutes. But, what can you guys do about this? And again, like noticing when people are on the phone all the time and alerting family members who appear to be good family members, like letting them know your mom has been on the phone a lot with somebody who I hear, like I had a client and he was spotted in the lobby giving cash to this lady who met him in the lobby. And, the front office people alerted the head nurse who called the daughter, and the daughter called me, and we had like a little intervention with him and decided it was probably not a great idea for him to have cash anymore. And this lady kept coming around, and he kept giving her cash. So tell people. I know that sometimes you guys are worried about like HIPAA violations and really kind of being cognizant of the privacy of your residents. But I want to reinforce this idea that if we don't say something, then things happen. And we've had a situation where actually a lady came and took a resident to Georgia. And we couldn't find him for a while. So things happen, and it's I'm laughing about it because it's just so ridiculous, but it's not funny. And honestly, it can be very scary. So really important to kind of identify what's happening in the facilities, who are the good helpers and trusted contacts, if you guys can establish who those people are. If there is a power of attorney document, make sure you get it. Make sure you know who the agent is. Make sure you understand what a durable power of attorney document is. And I'd be happy to come back and like kind of walk through what's required in Florida, what is allowed, what's not allowed. But really, you can actually have two agents under power of attorney that operate independently from each other. So you may not even need to have both agents available to help you with stuff. It can be one or the other if they have independent authority, and that should be clear from the document itself. We don't have springing durable powers of attorney in Florida, so there's no documents that activate when a person becomes incapacitated in Florida. It's automatic. So if you have a power of attorney, but you have a fully competent, principal, that's the victim in these cases, the agent still has authority. So, I would still be encouraging you to talk to that person because they are, in fact, a trusted contact by virtue of just being named under the DPOA. Bank fraud units can be very helpful. If you have a solo senior, a solo ager, notifying bank fraud units of things that you are suspicious of can be very helpful to freeze assets down to make sure that they don't lose all their money. Emergency temporary guardianships can happen in 5 days. So from filing to hearing, it can be very quick. Sometimes it takes a little longer than that, but usually that can create that immediate freeze down if we can't use the exploitation injunction. And then encouraging people to do planning, right? So get the DPOA in place. And when you talk to family members and they're like, oh, they haven't done any planning, we don't know who, get them to start the process for doing that. There are tons of estate planning attorneys, some who will even come out to facilities to visit with people. Okay. Any other questions? We're at 134. We talked about, managing residents after an exploitation. We talked a little bit about trespass warnings. If you have someone who is an exploiter, just get that trespass warning for them. Make sure you do it properly. Protective mantras. I talked about this attachment to repeated mantras. So we use mantras as well. When we know someone who's susceptible to exploitation or influence, we'll use mantras differently. So if there's like one family member who exploited the person, we come back and we say, Johnny stole $20,000. We are going to protect you now. Johnny stole $20,000. We are going to protect you now. And we have all the family members say the same thing, that same mantra. There's something about repeating the same words again and again that sticks in the person's head. And sometimes we are able to bring our victim back to understanding that, no, that was a delusion that they had. Now the truth that you're establishing in their brain is the actual truth. Therapeutic lies, we use them all the time, guys. It is not wrong to tell a person that, that they're going to go home. We know they want to go home and it'll be next week. It's okay. And sometimes when they've been exploited and they've attached to something that simply isn't true, then letting them think that is okay. So therapeutic lies are absolutely something that we use very often. We do try and pivot a lot. You guys already know this stuff, but sometimes with family members, it's good to just reinforce that it's okay sometimes to let the lie go unchecked. It's okay. We talked about the 7 scams. It doesn't improve. It's not going to get better. And it would be great if you guys had a structured protocol when things come up. So a system, an SOP that you guys implement when you think these things are happening, you make the call, you document somewhere that call has been made. There's a follow-up with the agent under power of attorney, probably a follow-up with law enforcement. You're right. Adult Protective Services is going to operate under Florida Statute 415. They're trying to make sure this person's safe. They're not trying to prosecute a case against somebody. So sometimes an outside call to law enforcement is a great idea because using the elder abuse hotline is only going to, work towards making this person safe. Sometimes they make the referral to law enforcement and sometimes they don't. So just doing an independent law enforcement referral can be helpful. All right, let's see what else we got. And then these are just some resources. Seniors versus Crimes has been really great for some of our cases. And they're volunteers, but often there are retired law enforcement or retired attorneys who will step in and deal with situations in a helpful way. And sometimes they can be the resource that actually connects you with a professional guardian of some kind who can do that exploitation injunction for you. All right. One Q&A question. Do you have to give a reason to the police when you request a trespass warning? Nope. No, you don't. As a business owner, as an owner of this property, I can issue a trespass warning to whoever I want for any reason. I am a private owner and I don't have to have a reason. And if they ask you for a reason, that's fine, but you don't have to. You can be like, no, I don't want to give you a reason. And they still need to issue the trespass warning. So yeah, it's interesting that, we don't use trespass warnings more. I really am a big proponent of them because you guys will, have these people in your facility and you're like, well, we have to tolerate it because they're so-and-so's, drunk uncle or whatever. No, you don't. No, you don't. And sometimes it's the case that resident is grateful not to have that kind of obnoxious person in the facility anymore. Not always, but sometimes. Okay, I know there may be one more question. Oh, two more questions, and then I'm going to wrap it up. What if you rent the building? So, that's a good question. But you're not trespass warning them from the building. You're trespass warning them from your assisted living. So you own it. When you're leasing it, you own or rent the space. And so you're saying, I don't want them in the property interest that I have as a renter of this unit. So yes, you can still do it. All right. That's it. Thanks you guys for having me, and looking forward to seeing many of you in the future.
We had one other person just asking for some clarification that a trespass warrant does not go against residents' rights.
No, you're not doing something to the resident. You are addressing the behavior of a third party. So realize, I wouldn't do a trespass warning to your resident, but you are doing it to a third party who is interfering in the business that you have happening here. I know, it's like this, it's like we hear that and we're like, oh, I can't do that. Yes, you can. Let me empower you. You can do it. You can do it. It is not required that you have people interfering in your business. You don't have to tolerate it. You don't have to tolerate it.
We just got a yay on that one. So.
Yay!
Awesome.
But the key is also when that person, that agent under power of attorney is telling you, keep my sister out or whatever. No. And you can now fall back on this statute. You can be like, we are so sorry, agent. We can't do that for you. We can't get, that would be a crime. If we did it based on your telling us that you're the agent under power of attorney, financial decision maker telling us to restrict access, it's actually elder abuse. Here's the statute. You can even look at it. So it's, unfortunately, it's like this family dispute and they're using you to and it just, you can't, just don't do it anymore. It's not, but if that sister is obnoxious, you guys can issue the trespass warning. But yeah, just don't get in the middle of those things because it's a problem.
So for clarification, someone who is disruptive in your facility, you can issue a trespass warrant, but you don't Absolutely. Have to enforce a POA trying to isolate a resident from seeing other friends or family members. So I think
and you shouldn't, because technically then you are the elder abuser. So just be mindful of that. You don't want to take on that, you don't want to be a defendant.
Definitely not.
Right.
Thank you so much, Shannon. We are going to share Shannon's information with all of you after this call and also the presentation so that you have access to those resources. Little change from our usual in that this time we would like you to complete the survey before we send you your CEU certificate. So it will go out very shortly after this webinar wraps up. Please complete the survey. It's our goal to make sure that these sessions are valuable to you. So your feedback is super, super important to us. And thank you, everyone. It's been lovely to have you join us, and be sure to join us next time. Tammy, is there anything I'm forgetting for Emily?
I don't think so. Shannon, if you have something specific you want me to share, if you want to email me that, I could send it, or
I have your slides.
Contact, or
so I can share
the slides. Yeah,
the slides. Okay, I didn't know if it was something else.
That people might want to they want to look at the brain research. It's fascinating.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Tammy, anything else?
No,
don't forget, everyone, it's renewal time. So renewals are
very
due.
important. Yes.
January 30th.
Yes. January 1 renewal due date. Reminder email invoices will be going out probably today or tomorrow if your renewal has not yet been received. So if you have any questions, give us a call at the office. We're happy to help.
Yes. So January 1, and after the 30th, we have to drop you, and we don't want to drop you. So everyone, thank you again so much. And thank you, Shannon. We'll be in touch.